When you think of darkness, you think of adversity, despair, gloom, evil, wandering, not knowing your direction. But in direct opposition to that, when you think of light, you think of hope, you think of direction, you think of a future, you think of joy, you think of truth, you think of freedom. And so Isaiah paints this very vivid portrait of, in the middle of a dark culture and a dark time, here comes this glorious, glorious light. Now, before we get to the light, I want to talk about darkness and living in darkness. I actually have a membership to different scientific journals, and I love different science, and I was reading about the science of darkness and what it does to people, not just physiologically, but what it does psychologically to people that are living in extended darkness. Now, physiologically, they experience sensory deprivation. They experience lack of spatial orientation. They don't produce melatonin like they should. And what happens is when they come out of darkness, there have actually been experiments where they try to drive away after the experiment and they crash because they've lost the spatial orientation. Some of them lose track of whether it's day or night. And there was one experiment that was done back in the 60s, not 1860, but 1960s, where two people that were cave explorers actually lived in complete darkness, even apart from each other, two explorers for about 80 to 120 days. One of them about 88 days, one of them about 120 days. And when they came out, they literally didn't know what day it was. They didn't even know what month it was. And they literally had such sensory deprivation that it was hard for them to see the light. They had to wear goggles, deep, dark goggles to keep them from the blinding rays of the light. But I want you to know, as severe as the physiological effects of ongoing darkness or extended darkness is, it's nothing compared to the psychological effects of darkness. The psychological effects of darkness are this. In 2008, the National Academy of Sciences conducted an in-depth experiment regarding the psychological effects, and here's what they found: elevated amounts of anxiety, depression, and boredom. Every situation. And other experiences have been done. That's just one of the most famous ones. And this is what happens when you live in darkness too long, is that you become anxious, you become fearful, you become almost psychotic in a sense, and the level of depression and boredom goes through the roof. That's what you have to deal with living in the darkness. Now, in the middle of this dark situation that Isaiah prophesied about, it says that people got a glimpse of the brightness, and it wasn't just a glimpse, it was an overwhelming brightness. It would be like you being in the dark for week after week, month after month, and then think not just about one light. Think about a floodlight in your room coming on and everything being illumined. It was stark. It was so contrasting that it was so unexpected that it shocked the people of Jesus' day. That's what Isaiah prophesied about. How do you know that? How do we know that the light that Isaiah foresaw was this brilliant light of Christ? Well, it says in verse 6, let's go down here. This would be a light that would illuminate a very shrouded, dark world. Isaiah goes on to explain, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." See, it's this Christ child that's the source of light. It's not you and me that's the source of light. It's not some new age religion that's the source of light. It's not government that's the source of light. It's not even education that's the source of light. The source of true light is the Christ child, the Messiah, the Savior, who we celebrate each and every Christmas.